day 3 of the Bible stories using household implements or items. Today we're looking at the Wednesday of Holy Week. So Jesus and his friends had had a busy day on the day we remember the Tuesday of Holy Week, having been in the temple and all of the conversations. So Jesus and his friends, as we remember the events on the Wednesday of Holy Week, Jesus and his friends were at the home of Simon the leper. Jesus had many friends, many people who he would eat with and drink with and spend time with. This too was in Bethany, where we know that he used to spend time with Mary and Martha and his friend Lazarus. While he was eating his meal, him and his friends together, being hosted by Simon the leper, a woman appeared. This woman brought with her an alabaster jar. And the alabaster is a sort of stone that things were carved out of, a white jar, and it was full of expensive ointment. This ointment was used as perfume, as medicine, or in religious ceremonies too. And what she did is she got this oil and she did the most amazing thing, to the complete and utter surprise of all of Jesus' friends, and she poured it over his head. What a strange thing to do. What a strange thing to do. But we've got to remember, as we've heard, particularly with the fig tree and with the stories of Jesus, that nothing is there without a meaning or a purpose. So we have to think, well, what was that meaning? Because Jesus' friends were immediately all quite shirty and annoyed. They were quite cross because she'd put oil over his head. They were eating dinner. She disturbed them. There were so many things that annoyed them. And they started to say things to Jesus like, do you know what, Jesus? This could have been sold and used for the poor, because the ointment that she poured over his head was nard. And this was a really expensive perfume. They were actually quite cross with her. And Jesus said, hang on a minute, boys. She has done something really important. She has anointed me. She has anointed Jesus. She has prepared me for what's to come. She has anointed him before his burial, because Jesus knew that the way things were going, it wasn't going to continue. He wasn't going to be safe. He knew that he had a choice to make, and he knew that things were going to get more difficult. And he said, this woman has done what none of you have. You think of the poor, but she actually wanted to show me her love. She gave me the best of who she is. I don't know if you remember another anointing in 1 Samuel 16. Samuel anoints David to show him that he is the chosen one, that he is God's chosen one, that he will be the next king. So we've got Jesus being anointed with thinking about his death and what is to come, but also to prove again, to show them that Jesus was God's son, God's chosen one. So all of these, the disciples were a little annoyed about this, but she had given the best of herself, and she had given of her best to Jesus, which is what Jesus asks of us. We may make mistakes, but actually if we can give the best of ourselves. This obviously was another key turning point. They were very cross, they were very annoyed, but they had to listen to Jesus. But one of them, Judas Iscariot, this is the bit that we often struggle with. One of Jesus' closest friends, one of the people that had followed him and listened to him and learned from him for the 3 years of his ministry, chose to do something that many of us will struggle with. Whilst all the disciples were still at Simon the leper's house, and Jesus had been anointed and the woman was there, this is where it all gets really quite nasty, because You remember the chief priests in the temple? They wanted to get rid of Jesus. They wanted to sort him out and remove him because he was just becoming such a troublemaker. Judas was so annoyed, and we don't know particularly why, whether it had built up over time. How do you go from being a good friend of somebody to wanting to betray them, to wanting the worst for them? How do you do that? How does that happen? Well, Judas chose to go to the chief priests, and he betrayed his friend. He said, for money, they were prepared to pay him because they so wanted to get Jesus out of circulation. They were so prepared to pay him, and they would pay him money, and he would betray Jesus. We're going to hear some more about this tomorrow, but I'm going to leave it there, and we think about the woman who anointed Jesus and Judas who betrayed her.